Hi, my name is Christopher Hollins, and I'm a managing director at Chase supporting businesses like yours. 2020 was a brutal year for the Black community, both in terms of lives lost and economic hardship. As we take stock of the damage COVID-19 has caused so many of us, we must point out that our Black-owned businesses have also been hit hard by the pandemic. In fact, it's fair to say that many Black businesses today are in a state of crisis because of the economic fallout from the pandemic, putting thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in worker income at risk. We know that Black-owned businesses closed last year due and for a number of reasons. And for the businesses that survived, more than half of them admitted to feeling concerned about their long-term viability. That may be you. That's why we're here today to discuss tips and set your businesses up to survive, revive, and thrive over the long term. You should have received a worksheet handout to go along with this session. I encourage you to follow along, take notes, and think of questions to follow up with us on. We hope that at the end of the workshop, you'll have a clearer vision for your business's present condition and for future state. And if you are game to fill out the worksheet, you could end up with an updated business plan. I am joined today by my colleagues, local business banking manager, Victoria Davenport, who supports DC and Baltimore, and Skylar Woods, who is my partner and colleague on our Minority Entrepreneur Initiative underneath the Path Forward. Victoria?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. I'm glad to be here. As Chris mentioned, I'm Vice President and Business Banking Area Manager here in the DMV area. I've had the pleasure of helping many clients during my 9 years of tenure here at Chase, so I'm excited to chat a little bit more about different tips and advice that we can help with your business along the way. And I'll let Skylar introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Victoria. Hi, everyone. My name is Skylar Woods. I'm an executive director at Chase Business Banking. I lead our division's Minority Entrepreneurs Program to support over 10,000 small business owners just like you with coaching, mentoring, and of course, access to capital over the next 5 years. Christopher, let's talk a little bit about why we're here today.
So thanks, Skylar. As we talked about, Black-owned businesses have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And what we are here to hopefully provide is some way for you to think about your business today and how to make it sustainable for the long term. Now, to get into some stark facts, 40% of Black-owned businesses have closed for good since February of 2020. We recognize that each one of you has been going through a unique COVID experience, and many may have already had deep losses either in your business or with the virus. As always, empathy and sensitivity are critical, and I want you guys to understand that while this is a business challenge, we recognize that there are human beings involved and that we are here to support you. Personally, I have had the opportunity to speak with over 25, 30 businesses in the last 6 months, some of which have found their way, others who have struggled. But I will say that one thing is in common: business owners like yourselves do not give up. They do not have a bone in their body that says, I cannot do this. And there have been tremendous creative ways that others have taken that business on. So if I move on to what we can do, we want to be able to begin by supporting you, our Black business leaders. There is momentum for a more inclusive economy, and we're here to help you build a thriving Black business and Black business community. As I think about how we're supported, we are supported by a program called Advancing Black Entrepreneurs, which is a group of partners, including Black Enterprise, the National Minority Supplier Council, as well as the Urban League and the U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce. This was created specifically to help Black business owners on topics vital to their survival and growth. As recent events have shown, we need the nation to be able to come together and support all small businesses, but in particular, Black small businesses. In the sessions that we've created for advancing Black entrepreneurs, we are actually trying to provide relevant information that allows for you to use advice and tools as well as resources in order to help your businesses. Note that this information is informational and educational and is not intended as a specific advice or recommendation for each one of your individual businesses. So from that point, let's move on. Let's kind of get to work, so to speak. As you think about what we need to do, this will be covered today. We're talking about how we shore up our businesses, how we reimagine the businesses or expand our thoughts on how to make our businesses relevant and continue to be survivable in this difficult time. And then how do you secure the future? Because I have confidence that each and every one of you has the capability of moving forward and growing. So in this section, we're going to focus on what happens within businesses and nonprofits. As you know, in getting back to work, businesses and nonprofits all over the country have shown creativity and perseverance. What we have been able to also do is really focus in on a couple of things that are extraordinarily important, not the least of which are how you're managing your business today. Like, how are you managing your cash flow? How are you thinking about your payables and receivables? How are you thinking about modifying your business model such that you can cover it either with the employees you have today, or if you have to be a little bit smaller, how are you able to cover your overall costs there such that your business can be viable? So in order to do that and in shoring up the business, I'm going to turn it over to Victoria, who's going to talk to you about protecting cash flow, such a critical element of being able to survive this pandemic. Victoria?
Thank you, Chris. So cash flow is very important, and it's something that I enjoy talking about as I've helped many small businesses over the years, and the importance of protecting it. A lot of times, maybe you're focused on the revenue or the net profit and the growth there, but it's important to really have cash on hand. If we go and talk about practicing clean accounting for new funds, if we can jump to that slide, it's important to really track your new sources of capital separately, especially if they're coming from grants or loans such as PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and really understanding and being able to clearly see where that income and capital is coming from, where the expenses are coming from. It will really make it easier, especially with regards to some of the loans and grants, to stay within those guidelines. I know that sometimes what I've seen different business clients is have separate accounts in place for operating or payroll or set aside for taxes and things like that. Really making sure that you're protecting that cash, that you're aware of the accounting, and that you're aware of all the transactions coming in and out of your business and your account as well. Now, if we go on to the next slide here, and I think we might have skipped ahead a bit, but we'll jump in and talk about some of the challenges after COVID-19. So obviously you can see these percentages up here, talking about some of the reduced profitability, cash flow issues, staff morale, even unpaid bills and invoices and paying rent, being able to make payments on time for some of your financial products. These numbers are staggering to think about some of the challenges that you're facing. And I'll let Chris jump in here and share a little bit more.
So what we have seen across these businesses, if we can just page back once so I can talk a little bit more in detail. All of these things you may be experiencing, or some portion of them. What this comes down to, especially when you look at cash flow issues and your unpaid bills, invoices, and paying rent, those are over half, if you really think about it. And those are things that are more within your control. I'm sure you are doing your best to motivate and to get people excited who are in your organizations or your companies, even with the challenges that are associated with the pandemic. And reduce profitability. Look, if your business is working at half of what it used to, obviously that's going to have an impact, and you don't necessarily control that. So what we're trying to do here is focus ourselves on the things that are controllable, and how do you make certain that you squeeze an extra penny out of every nickel, because that actually matters at this point in time, whether you are a recipient of PPP or if your business is healthy enough to not need it. So if we move forward, what you'll see is, we're thinking about those expenses that you can, what can you live without? The way that I talk to many business owners is, what is the essential 5-7 things that you need? And the way I always like to think about it are in 2 ways. Who must you pay for your business to continue to flourish, for it to continue to operate? You must know who those are, almost in priority order. Secondly, if there are receivables or people who owe you money, you must figure out how to help them help you. Even if they're not able to pay you 100%, you've got to figure out how to make certain that cash is working for you for those who owe you, because you've got to plow that back into those people who you or your suppliers in order to help your business. Now, while none of this is probably a tremendous surprise to you, I know it's difficult to ask for that order when you know someone else is really struggling. But right now, it's absolutely critical to help people get in a place where they are still paying you so that you can continue to make your business work. Now, that leads into our next chart, which talks a lot about how you must be able to talk to some of your suppliers. I also ask, many suppliers know at this time that your businesses are down, and they are not in the business of helping you go out of business. So if you've got challenges around being able to pay, if you felt more comfortable in helping those who owe you money to start getting money to you, it gives you a better place to talk to your vendors about potentially negotiating terms or later payments. But it is very difficult for those vendors to accept that negotiation if they ask you a few questions and it's not clear that you're really holding the feet to the fire around those who owe your business money. Moving on, you will see that, as we've talked about, managing your inventory and assets when it comes down to that is extraordinarily important as well. These are not shocking things for you, but what is the minimum amount of inventory you can make work, given that you've renegotiated supplier contracts and you are trying to wedge as much of those receivable payments back to you as possible? Those are the things that will make the biggest difference. And I have seen business owners who didn't think that this was possible have been able to squeeze out an extra 20% between what they were able to negotiate down and what they could get to come in a little bit sooner. And that has made a tremendous difference in them being able to continue to operate their business and make certain that they don't run out of the supplies and then the needed inventory in order for their business to actually run. So moving on from that, what you'll see is that there is an importance around clean accounting. And I would love for Victoria to jump back in, because in this area, this is what we're saying in terms of being able to really understand in a detailed level what your ins and outs are in order to give you a good picture for what's going on right now.
Thank you, Chris. So you guys heard me talk about this a little bit earlier, the practicing clean accounting. So not only just being aware of the cash coming in, the capital, the expenses, making sure that you're working closely with either a bookkeeper or a CPA, understanding financial statements. I know sometimes either as a new business or even as an existing business, really understanding, profit and loss sheet, your balance sheet, whether you're using what type of accounting software that you're using as well. So that, again, it all goes back to protecting that cash flow. As Chris mentioned earlier, if you're reviewing your balance sheet and you're looking at the inventory, and there's different things that you can make sure that you're tracking, days on hand when it comes to inventory and things like that. So there's even more details that you can dive into, but the important high level topic is that you have clean accounting, you know where the funds are going. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes having separate accounts helps with that. Just make sure that you understand and you're working with your bank and understanding any of the fees associated with that. Hopefully, if you set it up the right way, there aren't additional fees. And if we think more about protecting cash flow, and if we dive into the next area of that, where we really talk about revisiting your staffing model. Over the last year, we've seen a lot of changes with businesses. And in general, there's a lot of changes, and you think about what phase of the business that you're in. As you understand your organization, it's important to ask yourself, do you really need the type of staff that you have now? Are you going to need more staff? Are you going to need less staff? And then also thinking about, is it maybe you have an employee now who doesn't necessarily need to be hired as a W-2 employee, and they could be a 1099 contractor, and there's different costs and expenses with that. Or maybe as you're shifting focus, you don't need as many employees. And so you want to think cautiously and mindful about that, right? Because your team is important. You've built the relationship with a lot of these team members for a long time. And so as you think about that, it's important to have those honest conversations with them. Make sure that they're aware of where your business and company is, and that you're being empathetic as well with the approach if you are considering letting some of your team go. But it's important to think about it, right? Because a lot of times payroll, the cost of labor is a very high expense. And so it's important to be mindful of how that can impact your cash flow, not only now, but going into the future. And as we continue to think about the cash flow and the future, right? The next thought about that is forecasting. So not just thinking about where you are now. A lot of times, the pace of the business is running fast. You have so many different things that you're juggling, a lot of different roles that you're juggling as the CEO or as the owner, as whatever position that you keep. So it's important to sometimes take a step back and think about, where do you want to go in the next 3 months, the next 6 months, even the next 12 months? Think about where you've been financially as an organization, as a team, the types of clients that you're growing and building or shifting from, the different streams of revenue that you have coming in, and start to project, where do you see the growth or the changes within the next 3, 6, 12 months? That's really important. It helps also not only for yourself to understand as a business owner, but to really also for, as you're working with your bank, for them to understand the position that you're in. A lot of times as we help our clients and our business with access to capital, one of the things that we ask for when we're looking at lending is, please share your projections. We want to see where you expect your revenue to grow, or where when will you be profitable if there's, a phase where you're building up and you're not necessarily profitable yet. And we understand that, right? And the other part is, we want to know, what assumptions are you making? Because if you're thinking 6 months down the line, maybe revenues are going to grow within that 6 months, or maybe not, because you're putting in the time and the expenses with regards to additional staffing that you have to hire. So understanding all of that, there's a lot of details to think about, right? And that's why we're here as part of Advancing Black Entrepreneurs, to help you think through that and understand some of those choices and decisions and forecasting and the assumptions that come along with that.
And Victoria, to your point, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what you just said, and I have a quick example. So there, I live in the New York, New Jersey area. And so a lot of restaurants have to basically abide by what happens is the local rules in terms of occupancy. And so what I have been advising clients that I've talked with is, as you're thinking about your next 3 to 6 months, do a little bit of scenario analysis. Essentially what that means is, if where you are and you're a restaurant that does sit down dining, if it's 25%, what does that look like if you had to maintain that over the next 4 to 6 months, versus if it went to 35 or 40% a month or two from now? Like, do that little bit of scenario planning in your head, because it gives you a lot more understanding of what the puts and takes are for you to be able to manage your business And when you're talking with financial institutions, whether it's us or someone else, that helps them better understand how you're thinking about your cash flow and how best to create strategies to manage it. Thanks, Victoria. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's great, Chris. Thank you. There's so many different examples, and that was a good one, especially with regards to retail and restaurants. Even one thing to think about is business acquisition. It's funny, we see a lot of different things in this environment, and sometimes, yes, businesses are scaling down, but sometimes they're growing and expanding. And so when it comes to acquisitions, and we're looking at that projections of, the payroll expense, maybe it goes down, right? Because as you acquire a different business, some of those expenses go away. So a lot of different examples to consider depending on what you're looking to do as you project and forecast into the future. And then along that line, if we look at the next slide, to further discuss your banking relationship. As Chris jumped in with some examples, and you hear that, I've certainly helped a lot of clients. My team has helped a lot of clients. Overall, we're a big firm, right? But we have a lot of bankers who are truly dedicated to making sure that your success is important. And so we have the experience of helping a lot of clients and being able to give advice and different tips along the way on some of the challenges that are faced. And it's always surprising. We've got a great a survey that we do every year. We poll and we ask various different clients and owners and CEOs, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face? And surprisingly, it's that unexpected growth, right? Which is what we want for each and every one of you. Is we want to see you succeed and grow. And I know that your goal is to get through that as well as you start to build your business plan. And so there's different things that we've seen along the way that we can certainly help and remind. These are certain cautions, or these are, certain high points that we want to share with you and partner with you on. So if you haven't already, make sure that you're reaching out to your banker, whether it's here with JPMorgan Chase or whatever bank you're working with, because there's certainly insights that we can share and help give along the way for you. And now I'd love to have Skylar jump in and talk a little bit more about preparing and building upon your business plan.
Thanks, Victoria. I appreciate that. Christopher and Victoria have given some really great information about cash flows and the challenges of the pandemics. Let's take this time to put a lens on you and your business. The pandemic has been definitely hectic, but it also presents a really great opportunity to look at your business plan with fresh eyes, which is really the cornerstone of your operations. You should think about your business plan as a living, breathing document that changes as your business changes, as the environment around you changes. So this section, we're going to really tackle the fundamental questions that you need to answer when thinking about your business plan. As Christopher mentioned in the beginning, there is a little workbook that comes along with this session to help you analyze your strategy and develop your action plan. So let's just get right into it. If we go to the next slide here, let's take this time to think really quickly. When was the last time you thought about your business plan? Really, like, when have you looked at it last? Is it kind of dusty? Is it in cabinets? Or maybe it's something that you look at every day. This is a great opportunity for you to look at it and dust it off. So just check in with yourself about that. And if we go to the next slide, let's dig into, let's really dust off this business plan and what it looks like. So to begin, let's start at the top of the house, which is looking at our executive summary. Think of it as your Hollywood pitch for your business, starring your customers and you. How does your business delight your customer or help them solve their problems? The executive summary really helps you answer these questions. It serves as a high-level rundown of your business, and it's a great chance for you to grab the customer's attention about your business. So I'm going to give you a few moments to think about, let's write down a line or two in your notebook and really answer that question. What about your business excites others or helps them solve their problems? So I'll give you a couple heartbeats on that one. All right, let's go into the next slide where we talk a little bit about your company description. And we want to get to a sense of how can we describe your company in detail. Ask yourself, what is your company's grand mission and how do you hope to accomplish it? This is really important because it helps us think about, what about your company's product or service really matters right now to your customers. This is an opportunity for you to rebrand yourself and really make your customers take notice of what you're providing to them. It also provides an opportunity for you to talk about your company's culture and what you want to accomplish in the coming months. So again, in the workbook, you can take a look at it, and you can jot down some thoughts on that as well. So take a look at that. So if we go to the next slide here, we'll talk a little bit about market analysis. So the pandemic has really shaken up a lot of the business models that we have understood for decades, even centuries on end, right? So we can take this opportunity really to put a lens of focus on how are our customers' buying habits changing? What are the things that are staying the same, right? We could take a look at our suppliers. How are they positioning themselves in the market? How are they selling to us? And how are we evaluating our relationships with them? And then we can also take a look at the overall competitive landscape and how that's changed. We could take a look at our neighbors, our competitors across the web, and think about how are they meeting this moment in a way that really meets the customer needs and their desires, right? And this is really helpful when informing how should we be thinking about our strategy in order to kind of take ourselves to the next level. So really ask yourself, how are consumers meeting their needs at this moment? And how are how are their movements being limited now as a society considering the pandemic? And then this is really important, thinking about our competitors and how are they shifting to meet that need as well. All of these items together really help us think about what can we be doing differently in order to make the biggest impact in the market. So just take a couple of seconds to write down and think about, how are you positioned in the market right now to not only survive, but to thrive, as Christopher mentioned. So I'll just give you a few heartbeats on that as well.
And Skylar, if they don't have a good sense for that, this becomes an important thing that you need to investigate, because as you are building that plan, better understanding who you're competing with based on the way that you want your business to run will make a difference as to what choices you're going to make as a business owner.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. Good points, Christopher. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So let's see. So we've talked about our high level plan. We've talked about your company's mission, and we've talked about the competitive landscape. Let's dig into your special sauce, your products, your services. How are you meeting customers now with the new changes? And what are you doing to differentiate yourself? So really take that sense to think about what makes you special and what makes customers really want the product and service that you're offering today. So I'll give you a few heartbeats because that's something that I think is really important when thinking about how can we not only survive, but again, thrive, right? We have to move with the different changes and really make sure that we still have a seat at the table when people think about whatever service or product that you're offering. So if we go to the next slide, this is always my favorite part, but the most important element of your business is your customer, right? Can you draw a profile of your customer? Who are they? Where do they live? How much money do they make? Do they like Taco Tuesdays or Meatless Mondays? It's really up to you. Really try to put yourself in their shoes and how they move in their daily life, and figure out a way for you to mesh yourselves in their lives. Really be a linchpin. I think in this section, it's really important to explain what you know about your customers and how you'll reach them in COVID-19, considering the environment. The main question here is, what are the best ways to reach your customers right now based on the profile that you've defined for yourself? And really think about that when evaluating how you should be thinking about your overall operations. Okay. All right, let's go into the next slide. Victoria highlighted this beautifully in her section, but we know our customer, we know how we stand out in the competitive landscape. Now we have to execute. Who are the right people and the right technologies in order to execute your strategy? Victoria really highlighted this beautifully. You really have to think about your strategy when it comes to hiring. Is this person really adding a lot of value to create this beautiful product or fantastic experience? Or is this something that would be better outsourced to technology or other types of vendors that can do this particular aspect of your job better than you could just individually, right? So really think about what really needs sort of that human touch and expertise versus things that might be best served with technology. So take this opportunity to look at your workbook again. Describe your current staffing structure. Highlight, how is this the right team for this moment? Is it outsourcing? Is it technology? Or is it, as beautiful as the neighbors and the people that are on this call today, right? So really think about that in thinking about how you execute your strategy. All right, now it's time to get into numbers. Everyone loves numbers, right? Putting it together, it's really important. And Victoria and Christopher highlighted this beautifully. It's important to put together realistic financial projections that can set expectations and hopefully reveal opportunities. I mean, Christopher mentioned someone being able to squeeze out an additional 20%. That's amazing. These are things that we need to think about when evaluating our expenses. And then, of course, thinking about fantastic opportunities to generate more revenue. So really the main question here that we're driving at is, what are the assumptions that we're making when building our financial projections? And also thinking about what are things that can change that we should be thinking about contingency plans for, or evaluating new opportunities. We should take all of these factors together to put together the best financial projections we have, talk to our accountant or CPA, and then, take it to someone like Victoria or one of her bankers to think about, does this make sense? Does this make sense for my business? Does this meet this opportunity in the best way? What are the gaps that we see in our financial projections that maybe our bankers could provide insights on, because they see tons of businesses every day? They can bring those insights to you as well. So really think about those financial projections and how we can really mobilize your business to meet those customers. So I've said a lot of things, a lot of reflection, which is great. Let's take these thoughts and put them into action with Christopher, who will help us think about how can we reimagine our business. And I'll hand it over to Christopher.
Thank you, Skylar. Uh, Lovely points that you brought up. And one of the things that becomes really important as the business owner or the business lead is you can see, not like any other time before, or actually not different than any other time before, there's a lot on your shoulders. So in order to reimagine your business, you got to do your self-check. Like, are you in the mental space to do this? What would it take to get you properly motivated, or to get your headset kind of on correctly for you to imagine the business outside of the pandemic, to basically take a break, even if it's just an hour or so, from thinking about what is burning today, what is on fire and that needs to be addressed, such that you can step back and think about where you want this to go. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even going to try to play one on this call, but it becomes very important because your team, your staff, even your other self, if you're a sole entrepreneur, thinks about anything that you're putting into your mind that thinks about what you can't do, as opposed to focusing on what you not only are capable of doing, but what you are willing to do in order to make that work. So that kind of goes into my next slide, which basically is, 4 words: redefine who you are. This pandemic has redefined all of our work. As you can see, Victoria, Skylar, and I are all in our, home offices. We have lots of background noise. We have, husbands, wives, children, dogs, like lots of other stuff going on. And we still have to basically, soldier through it. And we know that the difficulties that we experience are only slight compared to some of the challenges that you feel and that you're experiencing. But part of that is in the redefinition. As you want this business to be successful post-pandemic, there are things that you need to be prepared to do and to have your mind in the proper place to do that. So I'll give you a couple of questions. What's at the heart of what you do? What is it that made you passionate about what you're doing today? And the reason why you got into business in the first place. Most people don't get into business to just make money. They do it because they either don't want to work for someone else, or they have this great idea. They want to serve their community. And Black entrepreneurs are very well known for wanting to serve their communities. That is a higher calling. And being able to re-engage into that higher calling will allow you some mental space in order to think about what your business needs to be differently. How can you turn your current products or services into new things that deliver on what people need today? Clients, your customers' needs are changing, even if they're buying in a similar way. There are things that they need today that they didn't think that they needed 12 months ago. How in tune are you with that? Are any of those things that they need things that you can provide? So as you think through some of those kind of the questions you probably are thinking about right before you go to sleep, do me a favor, do that 30 minutes earlier before you go to bed. Give yourself the grace to think through this. You have gotten through to this point, and there are plenty of ways for you to continue to figure out how to be relevant going forward. So all of that then speaks to what is your value proposition. So if we move on to the next slide, you know, if you think about what it is you're passionate about and where is it the client needs are, those together are your value proposition. It's that straightforward. So how are you solving those challenges? How are you meeting this moment in time with the products and or services that you provide? Think about what's worked. So, you know, if I think about some of the things that you've done, you've probably made some awesome, amazing decisions that initially you're thinking, oh, maybe this won't work, but it's created an opportunity for you to have a new way forward. For you to exist in business even today means that you've been doing this. You may not have known what to call it, but that doesn't matter. The fact is, it's within you to be able to do. And once you've figured out what that new way forward is, it becomes extraordinarily important. Back to an earlier point I made, your supply chain's got to work. And in your supply chain, that means that the people who are you're supplying you, or if you're supplying others, how do you make that become more your friend in this new environment? Sometimes just a few tweaks, and in a particular direction can uncover new unlocked value within your business. And this is the area where you need to spend a lot of time and attention because it's more within your control than other elements of how your business runs. And you want to at least have the understanding of how the inner workings of your business are such that you can drive home the success and or results that are expected. So therefore, what are you going to pivot to? So I'm going to push it back to Skylar, and she's going to talk a little bit about what is the potential of you pivoting your business.
Thanks, Christopher. Yeah, so, this point in time really presents an opportunity for all small business owners out there. Is your breakthrough COVID-19 moment still ahead of you? This is an opportunity to think more deeply about the services that you're providing. Can you meet a need that makes life a little bit more bearable for someone else? Also think about, prioritizing health and safety. These are ways that you can really win a lot of trust with your customers. And then this is a point that, that Christopher just highlighted that's super important. In this time where so many people are alone, how can you connect to your community, right? I think you see a lot of statistics of different cultures that live the longest. It's because they have a community behind them. And that's really important. I think people are definitely feeling that in this time. So, businesses serve a very natural leadership role in the community. Is there an opportunity for you to do good at this time? And it also helps you build your business, right? Let's go to the next slide here. So we've got a number of statistics out there, but this one is particularly salient. 69% of business owners feel they have a responsibility to their community after COVID-19. This is huge. Typically, people think of businesses as out for themselves. This tells a completely different story, one that wants to be very connected to their community and really make a difference. And so many businesses are stepping up at this time. You don't want to be left behind. You want to be part of that culture shift. So online presence, for example, is one of those ways where not only can you spread the word about your business, but better connect with your community. So I'll let Christopher talk a little bit more about that and how you can really improve sort of your wrestling with online presence.
Thanks, Skylar. The way to communicate before COVID was through your online presence. So if you weren't buttoned up then, this is the time to really reconsider how you're showing yourself online. Because people have limited mobility, don't have the opportunity to necessarily find you on, a Friday afternoon drive, or to accidentally run into you because you were referred by somebody else. Your online presence is your presence right now. And so your website needs to be easy to read on any screen, especially on a mobile device. As you well know, we also have within the Black community a little bit of a digital divide, especially in a lot of urban areas. So people aren't getting 200 megabits flowing to their house, and being able to upload, a movie in 5 seconds and being able to do that. A lot of people still run their businesses and everything that they're doing on a phone. So the ability for you to have an online presence that shows up on a phone or a tablet is extraordinarily important. So if we go on to the next chart, we've got 4 quick tips on how you can improve your digital experience. So like I talked, optimize your website for mobile. That becomes a clear and present opportunity for you. Actually, Google offers a few tests to allow you to evaluate the effectiveness of your website. They have a mobile-friendly test. It evaluates how easy it is for you to view your website on a mobile device. You can actually test it at search. It's at google.com/test/mobile-friendly. There's a test my site from Think with Google, which is it tests how quickly your website loads on a mobile device. You can test that at thinkwithgoogle.com/feature/test my site. So if you had not known that these things existed, this is something I would strongly encourage you to do in the next 24 to 36 hours. You need to know how people are seeing you on the web. Now, with uncertainty around business hours and what's being offered, there's your Google My Business listing, and there's others that do this. I'm using Google My Business because while we are not necessarily affiliated with them, I know that some of their tools are really easy to use, and you don't need to be a computer engineer to figure out how to make it work for you. And it also doesn't take up a lot of time. So, having that listing well understood is more important than ever, because people can't find you if your listing is, not necessarily sunk down from a search perspective, but not even searchable. So that's something to think about. As an aside, we, among other financial institutions, have been working to ensure that our small business owners are getting more of the light of day on things like our site. We had something the latter part of probably in the holidays of last year, where we took a lot of small businesses and tried to feature them during the holidays, such that if people didn't find them through searching off of Google or some other search capability, they found it because they came to Chase. I would imagine that your financial institution, if you're not with Chase, can do that. And if they're not, this would be an idea about how you should be thinking about Chase differently. So that is my only plug for Chase today. So let's get back to the 4 tips. Have a goal in mind. Visitors need to know what you want, what to do when they come to your website. Are you trying to push an experience to them? Are you trying to make more obvious what is available based on what you're selling? Is there some type of offer or something you're doing to try and draw people in? Make sure that's super clear. Don't let them, basically have to hunt and peck to figure out where your value is. Have that come out really clearly so that you can capture their imagination, attention, and potentially increase your business. Then lastly, make it easy for your products and services with something that's simple around how to pay. Because if people love your stuff, but you make it difficult to pay, they normally try to find it somewhere else. So those are kind of things that I would say are great ways for you to improve that digital experience. Moving on to the next slide. I do have one key point before we get here. A bigger online presence means you can do so many more things. It's going to help your referral business. It's going to help people know that you're out there and in the community and trying to serve and trying to figure out how to interact. If you're taking any of that market insight from the clients that you currently have and plowing that back into your website, people will know that you're listening, that you're hearing what they're saying and trying to make adjustments to your business. People love that. That makes them feel closer to you and closer to the business that you are running. So, how can I help secure the business for the future? That is going to come down to a couple of different things. Making contingency plans. I know people don't love to make contingency plans. I don't like it either. I don't like signing up for insurance, for like even auto insurance, let alone insurance for my kids and stuff like that. But those are all contingency plan activities that if something goes wrong, do you have some protection for yourself? And this becomes extraordinarily important, not only now, but in thinking about the remembrance of what you're experiencing today. So there's something that is disastrous, like a natural disaster, tornado, hurricane, flood. If something like that happens, you know that you've got a plan, you know what you need to do and how to move forward. So let's jump into that a little bit. So, there are kind of four main parts to a contingency plan. They are management and communications, procedures, kind of reviewing it on a regular basis, and succession. Like if something actually, God forbid, befalls you, how do you move forward? One of the things I want to make certain, if we move on to the next chart, as we're thinking about it, is from a management communications, do you have a management team? And I don't mean like hiring a bunch of people. I mean people that you know and trust, that if something was to happen, you could call upon that could help you. Some of that help could be moving inventory from the basement to a higher floor such that it doesn't get spoiled through water. Chain of command, like that is an overly corporate speak for basically who's got your back if something happens, and who do you need to communicate that to so that they can take action? Who's got the responsibilities? Do you have this documented? Having that documentation, even for yourself, is extraordinarily important. And I would invite you to do the following. Don't make this like some big piece of, like thing you got to staple and put away somewhere. You have a phone. It has a notes capability, whether you're on a Samsung or Apple or any other device. You're capable of kind of jotting these things down. Do it as you're thinking through the process of what you do during the day. You'd be surprised if you put your mind around that for about a week or so, what you'd come up with in your notes. You could then straighten those out and you have a plan ready to go. As importantly, who are your contacts? Who are the people that you must be able to get in touch with if something is happening to move the business forward? So we'll move on to the next slide. Procedures. Whether you're securing the area, if there is a fire or a flood, emergency supplies on hand, if that is a situation where, like in the pandemic, we're not able to get certain supplies. Now, you did not know this back in February of last year, but you know it now. If there's, anything to learn out of being able to squeeze that cash flow a little bit tighter, having a few extra dollars to be able to have that extra inventory in case you do have delayed in shipments to you in order for you to produce what you need to do. If your business is really in IT, you need to have a cloud service backup. Full stop. Like not having one of those is very dangerous for your operations if something weird happens to the IT setup you have today. Having financial operations, like how are things going to get paid? How are people going to be able to pay you if you lose electricity? Are there alternate ways to ensure that you're getting paid for the services that you're providing? And if you're a larger business, or even actually if you're a small one and you know, your aunt, your uncle lives across town and you've got a business that's mobile, where's your alternative work location? Like, where is a place for you to go? I know for me, I have a good friend who lives a couple of towns over, and he and his wife don't have children. If things get really squirrely here in my house with my 4 children, that's where I'm going. So I even have an alternate work location. And then obviously remote working, if that's possible. For most of us in Black and brown communities, that is not an option, but I have it there as just a thought about procedures. Next chart. Tests and reviews. This is all about just making sure that the plan that you have can be implemented. So those notes that you took to build the plan, figure out what it is kind of the weak point of your plan and that you need to test and to understand what you do in an emergency. And of course, connectivity, insurance coverage to the extent you have it, and making sure that your procedures are well understood by you and the people closest to you who are managing your business. And then finally, I think that's, yes, there we go. In order to do all of those things and having the appropriate plans to move forward, one of the things that gets back to access to capital, because if you do all that planning and you recognize that there's a gap for which access to capital is necessary, the planning occurs before the need ever gets expressed. So what Victoria is going to talk to us a little bit about is understanding your bankability and your planfulness around that. Victoria.
Thank you. Yes, this is something that's very important is understanding the relationship with your bank and how that can help not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. So if we jump and take a look at a statement here on this next slide, it says a clear view of your financial position gives you the flexibility to make proactive strategic decisions. And so I want to ask is, do you have a clear view of your financial position? That's an important question to ask and think about. And if you do, have you thought about any flexibility to start making some proactive strategic decisions? If we go to the next slide, one thing that I want to highlight is as you're thinking about how bankable you are, what does that even mean, right? So as you're having partners with your bank, as you're working with a business relationship manager, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of experience helping different clients at different phase of their business, whether you're in the growth phase, whether you want to acquire another business, expand, or maybe you're kind of in the sunset years, right? And you're looking at a succession planning. Throughout all of that, cash flow is important. We talked about protecting your cash flow. There's a saying that we talk about especially in the credit environment, it's cash is king, right? Because again, I've looked at, and my team has, and here we've looked at a lot of different tax returns, a lot of different financial statements. And I know as you're working with your CPA, there's certain tax strategies that you want to take advantage of, right? But at the end of the day, when you're looking at access to capital, it's important that you have the right balance to where you're not writing off all of your expenses and you don't show a lot of net profit. There's certain things that we look at within our credit policy, and it's important that we see the true strength of your business. We see that you have liquidity, which is really just cash flow. That it's not just a number on a page, net profit, great, high number, but is there cash in your account that you can use? And it's important not just for everyday operations, but for emergencies or for opportunities. And going back to what Christopher said earlier with regards to that contingency plan or insurance, we always like to talk about lines of credit as a type of insurance, right? Which is access to capital, where you don't necessarily want to come to the bank when you need it, but you want to start having that conversation early so we can share and work with your CPA or your bookkeeper to say, these are the things that we look at, especially within this credit environment. This is what we want to look at when it comes to understanding your balance sheet, understanding your profit and loss statement. Do you understand it, or do you understand every line item on there? What are the shareholder loans, or what is this expense here? We look at every little thing, and so we want to partner with you and share what is important to us and what you should be talking about with your CPA and bookkeeper, because there could be some growth potential there as well, or some areas that we talked about earlier where payroll is maybe really high and higher than it should be as you look towards the future and are forecasting where you want to pivot to next. And the last thing that I'll touch on here, because I've seen it so many times, I've worked with clients where they start at one phase in the business, and maybe they're starting out and as a startup, but they're growing. And so as your business grows, you want to think about your relationships and your partnerships and make sure that you're aligned with the right banker who has the right level of expertise to help you where you're at with your phase of the business. That's really important. And again, to all the different topics and tips and highlights that we shared today, that's something that we do here with Advancing Black Entrepreneurs to really make sure that you're aligned with the right partner. And we're excited to continue to do that for you. And with that, I'll let us make our closing remarks, and Skylar, kick it over to you.
Thanks, Victoria. I think this was a great session, if I may say so myself. I think my takeaways today are really around, it's really important to know your cash flow. I think Victoria did a fantastic job demonstrating the importance of bankability, and Christopher demonstrating the importance of really understanding your cash flow. The second thing I'm coming away with is, it's really important to know your business plan and really being intentional about building a community of customers. And then I think the third thing is, wrap yourself in a great support system, whether it be your teammates that are helping you manage your business day to day, or even thinking about experts in the banking field or accounting or legal to really help you think about every angle of your business to really make it better. And then finally, I think the important thing is it's really important to be open and adaptable to change to really push your business to the next level. So I will turn it over to Christopher and Victoria for their final comments as well.
Chris, it's all you. I shared what I wanted to share, and I'm excited for you to close it out for us.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Thank you for taking the time to allow us to share our thoughts with you. These come from some of the discipline of being within banking, but a lot of it from just the practical knowledge of knowing and or being small business owners ourselves. As Victoria already told you, she is supporting businesses in your area today, she and her team. Skylar has been a part of the banking industry for a number of years and actually served a lot of small businesses in the Washington, D.C. area. And while my relatives live over in Arlington near Shirlington, so for those of you who know the area, know where that is, my grandparents were business owners. They never worked for anyone else. And they struggled. I saw this as a child, understood some of the challenges that they had. Many times they had the right kind of cash and the right kind of business, but they never had a relationship with a banker. So they were never able to actually take advantage of their great business ideas and grow it very much past the liquidity that they had today. What we're trying to do here at Chase is show you that we want to have more intentionality in reaching out to you and trying to help you allow for your dream to flourish, for you to make your business viable, not only for today, but for the future. This is a really challenging time right now, but don't run from that challenge. Let's help you lead your business into the future. It's also the time to go the extra mile. Do a little bit more for your clients, engage more with your community, and strategize for your future. There really is an opportunity to gain an edge, or if it's not even an edge, a closer connection with your communities for which you serve, and that's why you get up every day. So I want to thank you again for your time and attention. And as you can see, we have a website, jpmorganchase.com/contact-ABP if you've got more questions, or you can visit jpmorganchase.com/ABE. Thank you so much. God bless and stay safe.